pain seems to follow, like a shadow dark and cold to the touch. Am I insane not to let go? Seems to follow, like a shadow dark and cold to the touch. Am I insane not to let go? Oh, go on, just do what you do. And it bleed. Just feel my heart inside. Our love can grow so bright. We found a way into the grace again. Let's not pretend our hearts have life again. Just stay one more night. I'll be by your side. Just stay. Just stay. Let's not pretend. We found a way again. We found a way again. We found a way, a new place.
All right. Well, I guess I'm live now. Really happy all you came to see this. This is my first time doing a live stream, so please bear with me with dealing with audio delay and chat delay and camera delay and all the fun things that come along with this. If you guys are having any problems with audio, if you can't hear me, you should be able to hear me now. I hope so. If you can't, please go ahead and do the old texty thing there so I can know. There is about a 30 to 60 second delay. I don't have the world's best internet here, so that's something we got to deal with. Liberty Loft, hey man, thanks for showing up. Good audio and good video. Thanks, that's good to hear. We give it a few more minutes, see if anybody else shows up. And if not, we'll just get going. My little workbench here, I gotta go back down to a one monitor setup instead of two. I can see how streaming would be way easier with two screens, because there is all sorts of stuff going on my screen. Pretty crazy. Hey Drift, thanks for showing up. How's things going on your end? All right, well, let's get started. And if you haven't figured out, this is going to be a build of the Shendrones Squirt V2. It's a Cinewhoop. If you don't know what Cinewhoop is, check out Paul Nurkle's channel, Nurk FPV. He is the man when it comes to Cinewhoops. I know there's a couple other guys out there, but he's the one that I saw to start at first. Or I'm sure he's not the first one, but he's the first one I saw. And he just has some just incredible videos. Real epic stuff there. But anyways, I just got this, well, I actually got this in about a month and a half ago. I've been kind of waiting on motors for the build. They came in Friday, so I was kind of planning on doing a live stream and putting it all together at the same time. Kind of a Q&A, live stream, whatever happens type thing. I'm going to make this chat box bigger so I can see it while I'm working here. All right, let's see. We've got a whopping 5 people. That's honestly more than I thought I'd have. So I've got a 2-camera setup. So I've got this top-down camera right here, and then I have this side view camera here. It's kind of a new addition. Yeah, gotta have this because sometimes building can test your patience. If any of you are recovering addicts, I'm sorry. No disrespect meant, but I will definitely be enjoying a beverage. All right, so let's get down to business here. So this is the main plate for the Shendrones Squirt. The way I bought this was without all the TPU parts, the ducts, or the camera mount or anything like that. And it's actually a pretty affordable frame if you do it that way. I honestly don't know what the price was with the ducts. I've got a couple 3D printers, and I've been 3D printing for a few years now, so it was kind of like, yeah, I'll just make my own. When you do the ducts, you do have 2 choices. You can do, the standard run-of-the-mill TPU ducts, which I like them, but they don't really hold their shape very well. And you can also, well, you can do them out of whatever material you want. And I chose to make a set of ducts out of Matter Hacker's Nylon X. This is a carbon fiber reinforced nylon. This stuff is tough as nails, and it prints pretty well. You got to have a little bit of specialty equipment, and the material is lighter than the TPU. It's about 1.5 grams per duct, which doesn't seem like a lot, but this thing is probably gonna be horribly underpowered. So wherever we can save weight, we will, because there'll be places where I add way too much weight for no particular reason, other than the fact that these are the parts I have laying around. So that's the frame, that's the ducts. For the ESC flight controller set, I have the Ori 32 setup. I got it from Banggood. I bought it off a recommendation that it will do 6S, but nowhere in any of the product information does it say it'll do 6S. It says it does 4. I've seen people online saying it'll do 6S. I originally bought it for a 6S racer for a Floss 3 build with those iFlight motors I got from Banggood a couple weeks ago. But I decided not to use this ESC, but I did use the flight controller. It's the Omnibus, what is this, F4 Nano V6, but it comes as a set from Banggood. Good flight controller, really liked it, but I bought an Acon 6S 4-in-1, so I kind of put the 2 together. So this has been used, this hasn't, but they're now going to be living in harmony together. Yeah, I didn't know if Nerd pioneered the Cinewhoop or if he was just the guy that really got it on the map, but yeah, he has some pretty incredible stuff. All right, so for the camera, I know I'm wasting weight here by using the Runcam Eagle Micro. This is one of the Rotorite JB editions. This is a great camera. It's heavy. It probably isn't the right choice for this frame, but it's kind of what I got laying around. And again, all around wasting weight, I have a Tramp. I am very particular to the Tramp BTXs. I really, really like these. The only reason I like a Unify slightly more would be that they're a little bit easier to mount. But if you said I could only have one, it would probably be the Tramp. I haven't tried any of the new the new TBS ones. I've heard good things, but I haven't tried one yet. And I'm gonna have to go with my tried and true R9. This R9 stuff's kind of what got me started in this whole YouTube world here. This is going to be the R9mm. Definitely don't confuse this for the R9 Mini. The R9 Mini has almost no place in the mini quad world. As long as there's still F4 flight controllers, the R9 Mini, I would just stay away from it. R9mm all the way. Super light. And this one, Banggood's starting to sell them as pre-packaged with antennas already glued to the receiver. So this is kind of a neat little package. It has a blue band on it. Let's see, the packaging said it was FCC blue, and it says it has a firmware version of 6.1 flash to it. I can't cross-reference version 6.1 with anything on FreeSky's website, so I don't know what that meant. I just went ahead and flashed it anyways before we started the video here with a F-port version of the Flex firmware, the newest version they have. I've been using it on a bunch of other quads, and it seems to work really good. The Unify Nano, I've got one of those in a race quad, but I think it only does 50 milliwatts. I'm not 100% sure about the new Nanos. And plus, I had a problem with the new Smart Audio Standard version 2.0. It just didn't communicate with Betaflight well, but I'm sure that, I mean, that was a couple months ago, and the way this hobby moves, I'm sure that's all been straightened out. Yeah, Liberty Loft, that R9 Mini bundle, man, that was a pretty sweet deal. If you know how to work it, you can make them work on an F4. And there's a couple F4s out there that work really well with them, but in general, unless you're planning on doing redundancy, it's not really worth it. Moving on to the motors here. These are what I was waiting for. I have become a huge fan of the Amaxino motors. If you haven't seen my video on my cavity build, it's kind of a it meant no disrespect to Bob Ruge, Kebab FPV. He hasn't produced anything yet, and I've kind of just been waiting, and I 3D printed my own, and I used the Amaxino motors that he suggested, and those things are fantastic. So I decided to go with the Amaxino 1407s and a 1400 kV variant. These things are tight. I mean, they are hard to turn. These things are not notchiest motors I have ever felt. Here, let me put up to the microphone so you can hear this. These things are hard to turn, so I'm not 100% sure how well this is going to work on this build. I would think a looser air gap motor would probably be better, but I mean, look at that air gap on these things. It is so tiny. Really well-built motors. We'll see how well they work out. I got a feeling I'll probably be doing a V2 of this thing where I change everything around and do something totally different. But, got to start somewhere, right? Okay, so, got our frame, got our parts. Full disclosure, I did go through and mock everything up, so I got my stack height right. That way I'm not spending an hour trying to piecemeal hardware to get this thing together, because if you try to do really clean, tight builds, like everything I build is slam deck, very little clearance, I spend more time figuring out all the spacers and ESC spacing off the frame than pretty much anything else. Building it is almost second. All right, so let's get started here. So first thing I'd like to do is I like to build from the outside in. And one of the things that I've noticed with this ESC, which is, I don't know, I don't think I'd really recommend anybody purchase this ESC. I've heard it's reliable and it works well, but it does have a couple little irregularities to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just pin one of these motors in place. CGFEV, yeah, I'm planning on building this whole thing tonight. It shouldn't take too terribly long, I hope. But anyway, so I'm gonna just kind of pin this motor in place with 2 screws. So, and that's probably all I'm ever gonna run on this thing is just 2 screws. This thing's not made to go fast. It's not made to do flips. just made to fly low and slow. So now that I got that motor in there, I am going to readjust this here. All right. So the weird thing about this ESC is typically you would think it would mount like this with all the pads up, but if you look at here, the way the naming convention is on it is here's motor 1. I get this in frame here. There's motor 1, motor 2, 3, 4. This thing is intended to be installed upside down, pads facing the carbon. And I don't really want to mess around with reassigning motors. I mean, ideally you would want to mount it like this, but oh well. So what I'm going to do, so motor 1's always going to be down here, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Just going to lay it out. And the way the ducts work on this is they kind of sit over the frame, so you can't run your wires across your arms here. So what I'm thinking about doing is running them back behind and then through the center here, just to keep them out of the way. That way nothing gets sliced up. So kind of like that. My duct would go on like this to clear the motor wires, and ESC right in the center like so. So on these, I'm not planning on actually, I'm not going to trim any of these wires. I'm just going to solder them up full length. I could make a few twists to kind of suck up some length if I need to. And if I decide I don't like this thing, at least I have full length motors that I can use on something else. So let's go ahead and set the frame aside. And we'll spark up the old Heiko. And I got my trusty little 3D printed vise. I can't post the STL to this, but if you're interested, go to thingiverse.com and search for vise. It'll be like the second one that comes up. It's called Yet Another Vise. It's a really good little print. If you have the means to 3D print one, I highly suggest it. These things are super handy, although it is just plastic. It's not super strong, but it's strong enough for the things that we will be doing with it in this hobby. All right, so my soldering iron I run at 850. Whether I'm soldering the tiniest thing or if I'm soldering at XT60, I don't care. I'm soldering at 850 because I am a firm believer that dwell time, and dwell time is the time that you spend on the pad, is what ends up destroying boards. Sorry, I got to reroute something back here. That's what destroys boards and lifts pads. Will the frame have Aloft, will the frame have landing pads to protect the wires? Well, it doesn't come with landing pads, and I wasn't really planning on putting them on there. I may just put a thin piece of foam on there, not like the full like dog bone style, real thick squishy pads. Maybe just a real thin piece of like that really cheap battery mat. I think that would probably be more than adequate for this. Let's see if I can make that work out for us here. That's pretty blurry. All right, I'm going back to the overhead. There we go. Okay, so like I said, 850 all the time, every time. It's all about prep, clean iron, clean work, clean solder. Get in, get on, get out as fast as you can while still actually making a good joint. So first thing is a little solder on the tip. Get that solder bridge. That helps get the heat into the work faster. Touch the pad, and then I kind of touch between the iron and the pad. Just give it a sec. And there's the first one. And as you go along, the board will preheat, and each pad will go by faster and faster. See, we're just cooking along now because we've actually started putting heat into the board. And it's funny, I can see flux moving on the MOSFETs, like leftover flux from the building process at the factory. Just go back and just touch them up, reflow them a little bit. So there you go. There we go. That's 2 sets of motor pads, pre-tinned. You always want to pre-tin. It'll just make the attaching wire part way faster. And again, it's that dwell time. That's what kills boards. If I set my iron at 700 or 720, 750, I would be on here way longer, putting way more heat into the entire board rather than just heating up the area I need to heat up to get the job done. So there we go. And now we'll move over to our main discharge leads, or our pads anyways. I like to start on the ESC pads rather than the main discharge lead. Everybody likes to start on the main discharge lead, and you know, everybody's got their own right to do that. The reason I don't do that is now the board's preheated. I don't have to sit there and just bake the crap out of the pads. Oh, sorry if I swear a little bit. I'm human, and I swear. I try not to, but it happens. I always got to think if my grandma's in the room. And after you've built a couple flight controllers up and ESCs up, you'll find that the ground pad always takes longer because the ground plane goes through the entire stinking board here. Like I'm having a hard time getting the heat into this. There we go. So that's the first step. Now while I'm here, I didn't prep this. Again, like I said, I'm doing a lot of stuff that I'm using a lot of stuff I have laying around. Yeah, I shake like a crackhead, but somehow I managed to pull it out right when I go to solder. I solder a lot at work. I've been to a lot of different tech schools for soldering, and it's a major part of my job. So I definitely have a lot of experience doing it, but I do shake pretty bad. Beer helps calm me down. This was just something, this XT30. I am going to use XT30. I'm only planning on using like 854S packs, and all the ones I have are, they're all XT30s. So this was already built up, just kind of my bag of tricks. I'm just going to use this one. I'm not really, I'm not going to just throw it away and build a new one if I don't have to. So remember, we got to route these up and around the board. So go ahead and get her hot. Start pushing some solder into it. And let's just wait until it melts. Remember, soldering isn't, you're not brushing the solder on, you're trying to join the two parts together. So the base material has to be hot, the piece you're trying to attach has to be hot, and the solder has to be hot. If I had a bigger tip, this would help as well. And there we go. That wire is smoking hot right now. And now that will have hopefully heated up, preheated the ground plane. So we can get in here real quick. I wish I could zoom in with my, I'm using my phone over IP for the overhead cam. And normally, if I was recording like just standalone, I would zoom in on this, but I can't with it being over IP for some reason. And this is my first time doing it, so you know, bear with me here. Let's see, let's go ahead and take a look at our handiwork here. Okay, these aren't the best main discharge connections, but they will serve just fine for us. And you notice that my ESC pads are bright and shiny. That's what you want. If they're dull and gray, you either don't have enough flux or it was a cold joint, you haven't had enough heat on it. Also, a lot of these components that get imported into the US, if they're classified as children's toys, they're going to have lead-free solder, and you're going to work like hell trying to solder stuff to it. The best thing you can do is get it hot and get the old lead-free solder off. and start over. Anything that comes, like this electronic stuff that comes from China pre-soldered, just plan on it being lead-free. And lead-free is kind of a pain in the butt, but you know, legislation the way it is. Oh, by the way, I am in the United States, so if I speak of inches, dollars, and pounds, they might mean something different to me than they do to you. And I'm just cleaning this off with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, little gun brush, and this does one of two things. One, it helps clean the part, because you don't need to get the flux off, but it's always a really good idea to do so. Some flux is corrosive, some aren't, and it's kind of hit or miss whether you have the non-corrosive side or you do or you don't. And two, it cools the part off, so it helps get all that residual heat out of the part. Alright, so there's our ESC soldered up. Let's see, Liberty. The solder I'm using, just for reference, is this SRA stuff. This is, I go through pounds and pounds of solder a year at work, and we always buy just the typical 60-40 mix. Since using this stuff, I'll never go back. Even at work, I purchased this brand and this type of solder in the 32 thousandths diameter. Best stuff on the market that I've ever used, and I've used quite a bit. It's a little bit more expensive, but I mean, we're talking like pennies. Hey, Du, how's it going? All right, so there's our ESC. I didn't really plan this out well. Probably should have saved that main discharge lead for last. Mike Blair, what's so bad about the R9 Mini? The problem with the R9 Mini is if you're using an F4 flight controller that doesn't have a hardware inverter on any of the UART TX pads, you're not going to be able to use smart audio, or not smart audio, but smart port telemetry without having to use soft serial, which is going to eat away at your CPU cycles. There are quite a few F4 flight controllers out there that do have built-in inverters, like the Holybro Kakute, the JB F4. Those ones will work just fine, but the difference is with the R9MM is it has a inverted, I'm using air quotes because it's very confusing, it has an inverted smart port telemetry pad, which then allows you to connect it to any unused UART TX pad without having to jump through the hoops of using soft serial or any of that stuff. That's the downside to it. The one thing it does do, the R9 Mini, that the other one doesn't do, is it has receiver redundancy, but for mini quad life, I don't see much of a use for it. But if you were doing like a wing and some long range trick stuff, basically if you're doing long range stuff or wings where you're going to be doing receiver redundancy, you pretty much know what you're doing anyways, and you should anyways know what is going to be needed to make your stuff work. But I'd say 99% of the questions I answer on YouTube has to do with smart port telemetry and F port and all the issues surrounding that. Hope that answers your question or make any sense. If you have an F3 or an F7, it doesn't matter. Those processors, the F3 and the F7 chips, have a inverter built into the chip itself, so it's not an issue. But I mean, F3s are being phased out, so I would never buy an F3 just for that purpose. And if you don't fly with all the auto level modes on and all the extra stuff like LED strips, you'll have enough CPU clock cycles left over to run soft serial. But you know, why do it when you don't have to? You know. All right, let's get in here. So if you're just joining, based off of my mock-up, I've decided that I'm not going to cut my motor wires down. I'm going to leave them long, so I have plenty of room for them. All right, these might look a little ugly, but I am definitely going to go back. I'm sorry if that's really loud with stuff falling down all over my bench here. Let's see, mic player. Which firmware version are you using on the R9MM? I am using the latest, I think it's like February 9th of 2019, Flex F-port software. I've got a whole wall of quads. I've got a whole wall of quads over there. I'd say all but 4 of them I'm using R9, and all of them I'm using the R9 Flex firmware, and I have not had any issues. The big problem is you have to match the firmware on your receiver with the firmware on your flight controller. You can't, or sorry, not on your flight controller. Man, it's hard to talk and do stuff at the same time. You have to match the firmware on your R9M module or your R9M Lite module to the same firmware that's on your receiver. So if you decide to upgrade the firmware on your R9M, you then have to go through and do it on your R9MM receivers or whatever receiver you do have. And upgrading the firmware isn't super easy. I have a video on how to do it through serial pass-through, and there's a few scenarios where it does work and it does work well, but like I've had the TBS Crossfire, and software updates on that are stupid easy. You know, it's all over there updates, but unlike the TBS receivers, you can brick those. If something bad happens during the update, they brick. And I think the only way to unbrick them is to use a TBS power cube to flash them, which, I mean, I don't have a TBS power cube. I don't know anybody who does. Whereas the R9M, I believe they are unbrickable. You can fry them by hooking power up backwards and things like that, but you can't actually brick them. Because the first, like, half a second when you power them up, they go into bootloader mode. They always look for something trying to communicate with it for flashing. All right, let's take a look at this mess. Yeah, that looks terrible. You can see I got a little bit of a bridge right there. It's pretty easy to correct. Better to do it now than to have a smoke show later. And by the way, soldering over your board like this, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't do it. And these 20 by 20s, man, the pads are just so close to each other. There's a little bit of a pitfall when you update your firmware on your R9 system. Is sometimes it'll still be bound, but if you don't rebind it, just arbitrarily go through rebind it, you might have issues going down the road. I've had some where it'll start losing telemetry like super early, or I'll lose link like within a couple feet. It's really weird, but if you rebind, anytime you update your firmware, rebind. Even if it's already bound, rebind it. Mike Blair, the latest information from FR Sky is saying that their newest hardware will update automatically, just like the TBS Crossfire. Yes, I've read that. I read that back when they had, we had the TBS FR Sky long range war that they came out and said that. But to date, I still haven't seen anything on it. I'm hoping that with this new line of products with the access protocol and all that stuff coming out, that hopefully that is in the works. I really wish FR Sky had better customer support, or customer support at all in general, but the fact that they don't have it is probably the only reason why I am as far along in YouTube as I am. When I made my first like real product review, it was R9 versus Crossfire, because there's nobody out there talking about R9. I mean, there was Crossfire and Dragon Link and like the R9L system. Nobody was talking about it. Yeah, over-the-air updates would be awesome. It's no fun digging a receiver out of a model just to update it, to fix something that should have been broken in the first place. I've had really good luck with the R9 system. The only receiver I didn't have any good luck with was the R9 Slim. The field I fly out of here, we do our races at, there's one weird little RF spot, and it's not very far away from where the pits are, where I had fail safes. A buddy of mine running RM had fail safes. It's just a weird RF area, and a lot of people think that this long range stuff, like the Crossfire and the R9M, is the silver bullet for RC reception, and it's not. It's very finicky. You have to be much more conscious about the RF environment you're flying in, the orientation of your antennas, the quality of your antennas. The old 2.4 gigahertz system, man, you could lob off half an antenna and the thing will still fly just fine, and you'll hardly ever notice you're having a lack of range. This R9 stuff, you clip a quarter inch off the end of one of your antennas, good luck. You're gonna have a hard time. I'm using F-port. Hazmat asks. Yeah, I'm using F-port instead of SmartPort. I've had a lot of really good success with the SmartPort stuff. With the F-port. In the beginning, up till about 4 months ago, I really would not have suggested F-port, because I've had nothing but issues with F-port. But now I think all that stuff has been worked out. I have had no issues on the last couple iterations of firmware. And I think the F-port is a good way to go, if you have the hardware that can interface with it. Another piece of equipment that I have that's super useful if you're in this, a jeweler's loop. I just go through and I'll just check all my solder joints with the jeweler's loop, just to make sure I don't have anything bridged. I mean, I'm definitely going to go back and look at it with, or hit it up with a multimeter, but give the old ocular assessment, as Mac would say. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, let me know. I use some weird movie references or TV references that most people don't get. Let's see. Get an idea what those, see how well you can see those joints. This is an indispensable piece of equipment. Highly recommend getting something like that. Sorry if you're hearing the ding dongs. That's my phone going off. The guys I fly with are spreading the word that I'm doing a live build right now. Let me check, see how many people we got in here. 10 people. Cool. Well, thank you for everybody who showed up so far. If you got any questions, ask away. If you're just coming in, don't know what I'm building or what parts I'm putting in there, hey, you know, ask away. Okay, so I've got my my mess of ESC and motors all laid out here. And before I started this live build, I went through and I chose all my hardware for my buildup. Everything's going to be M2 screws. And I like to build low and tight to the frame. If something's going to come off, it's going to fry anyways. I might as well save myself some space. So all I'm using is one of these M2, I think this is by 20 screws, with one plastic. Sorry, it's a nylon. Or is it not? No, I think it's nylon. At least when they burn, they smell like nylon. One nylon nut as a spacer. Yeah, Liberty, I can't even count how many just wisps of wires I've seen bridge gaps before I before I start buttoning things up and hitting it with a meter that I've found with the jeweler's loop. Let's try camera 2 here. Get a little different perspective. Keep people entertained. So this is my first time using OBS as well, so I'm kind of learning how things work as far as like chat windows and all this fun stuff. I mean, this is basically what I'm gonna do every time I do anything with these mini quads, except for now it's recording it at the same time. I can go back and do the whole YouTube thing afterwards. All right, so got my standoffs in there, and we'll go ahead and very carefully press this in there. Now, like I said, I usually don't build with the motor soldered to the ESC first, but this ESC is kind of funky where everything is upside down on it for some reason. So there's that, and I'll just kind of pin it in place with two of these little standoffs. This purple anodized standoff that came with the stack combo when I bought it. So I'm just kind of using those. They're kind of cool looking, but that's not what we're here for. We're not here for looks. We're here for performance, I guess. Nah, we can be here for looks too. All right, so give a little bit of a twist. Wrap it up and around. Don't forget about PBR. Oh no. Nobody's gonna forget about PBR. And before you say anything, I've liked PBR since I was 14. I mean, 21. Before it was hip, before there was a thing called hipsters, I've liked PBR. I've always liked PBR. Yeah, the best way to mount the antenna for like the Immortal T style or basically any of these R9 style is in this orientation, straight up and down, or even with just a slight cant to it, if you can see that. Laying it flat puts the nulls in a really bad spot where when you start doing turns, you'll eventually point a null at you. And that's when a lot of people fail safe. But when it's up and down, the null point is this way. So if you don't know what a null point is, that's basically where there's no signal coming out. The signal propagates from the antenna. If you picture like a drop of water in a pool, how it ripples outwards, cut that in half, and the part where nothing comes out, that's the null point, and that's how an antenna radiates. If you're curious, get on the Google or do the jazz hand routine and look up radio wave propagation, and there's so much stuff out there that will help you out. But basically, if you point it up and down like this, the null point is one's pointing up in the sky and one's pointing at the ground. And the only time you're going to get one pointing at you is basically when you're nose down, like doing a flip or something like that, as opposed to like a typical yaw turn where you're going to end up pointing at yourself. But they're harder to transport in that position as opposed to laying down. For race quads, I'm never really dealing with range. So yeah, I put them in the most convenient location, basically, so they don't get chopped off when I inevitably crash, because I'm not very good at racing. It's a lot of fun, but ain't no good. And I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as a bad build unless it goes up in smoke. All these really pretty looking quads where people have the wires braided and all that, wires going up underneath between the ESC and the flight controller for all the motor wires, that's honestly not good practice. There's a lot of high frequency EMF going through these wires. The farther away you can keep them away from all the other electronics, the better. You only drink PBR when you have to. So what's your drink of choice? I'll remember to bring it over next time. When are we doing a whoop race at your place? Wish you could have made it out last weekend. That track was... Well, let's say we learned some things about flying at night. It wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't think it was going to be that hard. And it was amazing how much a little bit of light made a difference on the track. Yeah, Mike Blair, don't send it the first time. Like, don't just go out there and shoot for the moon and over traffic and all that. Just take it easy, baby steps until you can trust your equipment. The last thing you want to do is go walking out, doing the 1.5 mile walk of shame to go get your quad. There's a lot of long-range videos on YouTube with guys that have a lot more experience than I do actually flying these things out in remote locations. Something to really consider that a lot of people don't is your RF noise environment. Like if you're around, major city, lots of routers, lots of RF interference everywhere, you might have less range than if you were out in the sticks, So these Amaxino motors, they come with a variety of hardware, a couple different lengths of hardware, which is kind of nice. I would assume that basically whatever thickness frame you have, they're going to include the screw length that you need, unless you got something ridiculous going on. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, 2 screws on a motor. That's all I'm going to use. This isn't a racer. It's not an acro. And I don't think it's going to need all the tension in the world. I'll probably go back and Loctite these just because. Just better safe than sorry. So yeah, I know it doesn't look pretty. It's not supposed to look pretty. It's supposed to work. Plus, I am kind of buying myself some insurance later on that if I don't like this, I've got full length of wire to work with if I need to pull it off there. Liberty is the RSSI issue resolved with the latest firmware? I feel like it is, kind of. And the reason I say that is the firmware has RSSI baked into channel 16. So no matter how you hook it up, you're going to get RSSI. And it's going to come through Betaflight on channel 12, aux 12, which is channel 16. And the only issue I've had with it is it either works or it doesn't. You'll either plug in and be at 50% RSSI because there's no value, and that you just unplug and plug back in, or it works. Or the surefire way to do it, and it's probably the most reliable, is to take your telemetry channel or your telemetry value for RSSI that comes in your Tyrannus, assign it to an aux channel, and send it back to the flight controller. That's the most accurate way to do it. But with this latest version of firmware, I haven't had any issue. The one prior, it was only maybe a month or two older. I did notice some major RSSI issues as far as just reliability of range. But with this new one, I haven't seen any issues. But you know, I am a usage case of one. With the new firmwares, especially the Flex, you do need to flash OpenTX 2.2.3 to your radio. So if you don't have that, you may have issues with RSSI or connections. I haven't been through the changelog to actually see what has changed, but I know that was one of the prerequisites for it. And do the old Bardwell thing. I have a video to that, which I do. You just got to look for it. Okay, ESC's in, motors are hooked up, and right now what we can do is we can actually plug it in and just make sure we get our ESC startup tones or smoke, one or the other. So before I plug it in, I'm gonna hit it up with a multimeter. This is the Super AV4. It's actually a really good multimeter. I mean, I wouldn't use it for production stuff, but for what we do here, it ain't bad, and it's pretty darn cheap. So all I'm going to do is check from one of my motor screws to my ESC pads, which I realize I can't reach because of this funky board's orientation. You know what? YOLO. We're just going to say, we're going to just make sure we got continuity ground, which we should. All right. And no continuity there. Okay. So fairly confident that that is good. And okay. Well, I'm going to run a smoke stopper anyways, just because why not? They've never helped me yet, but all right. 3, 2, 1. Contact. Okay. So we shall continue because it's still good. Let's see, Liberty Loft. You're still on OpenTX 2.2.2, but I'm using F-port. Be okay. Yeah, F-port is okay until you start to get to the Flex firmware. If you're using Flex firmware with F-port, you really should update to 2.2.3. It's a super easy process. It'd take you, I mean, 10 minutes, depending on your download speed. So I'd recommend doing it if you haven't. All right. Motors are in. We're going to move on to the flight controller. Again, this is the Omnibus F4. Sorry if that was loud. The Omnibus F4 Nano V6. A couple things to note about this. The silk screening sucks. It's very hard to read. The pad placement is really weird. It's tiny. It's a 20 by 20. The flight orientation is this way, is forward. But your camera connections are on the side. all your other UARTs in the front. Like this thing should have been produced like this, with this being the forward direction. But I don't know what they're thinking. I'm just gonna roll with it though. Yeah, it has been used already. It came out of a working quad. That's why you see solder already on it. It's almost impossible to solder this one up without the owner's manual. It does not have a built-in inverter on a TX pad for using soft serial, or sorry, not soft serial. Man, I always get those confused. For using smart port telemetry. So if you have a receiver that doesn't have inverted smart port, you're going to need to use soft serial or not use it at all. But we're using the R9MM, like I said before, so we're gonna go with that. Yeah, you like seeing smoke when it's not yours. Yeah. All right. Go ahead and screw this down. Yeah, I did a video on my, I don't know if anybody saw my gecko build. I went on a limb. I bought one of the, what was it, the Helio Spring 20x20 boards, and the ESC I bought for it, they weren't a match set, so I had to wire up the plug. And I did something really stupid where I laid the diagram for the ESC like this and the flight controller like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, just back and forth. But instead, it should have been like on top of each other. So I ended up pushing VBAT to the motor TX or the motor 4 pad and just burned a hole right in the center of the F4 chip. But I did go back, desolder the F4 chip, and solder a new one in from another not as dead board, and it worked. Except for the F3 coprocessor was fried too, and I couldn't find a replacement for that. I think that's some proprietary stuff from those guys. Okay, so got our flight controller installed, and we'll put our camera standoff in the front. This firm's pretty simple. It's just a bunch of standoffs and a carbon plate, and then some TPU ducts. Set gyro to use second. Junk 8874. What are you referring to? Okay, so we're gonna use the Runcam Micro Eagle. This is the JB edition. Wouldn't be my normal choice for this because it's kind of heavy, but it's a beautiful looking camera. If you've never tried one, try it. It's hard to go back until you start crushing them. Then they're pretty darn expensive. All right. Sorry, I got to get out my cheat sheet wiring diagram for this. These Omnis boards are not the easiest to lay out. So that's the Omnibus board there, and all my camera pads are here. So camera control, video in, video out, and that's 8-volt regulated pad and ground. So that's where we're gonna hook our camera up to, is right there. When you update that V6, motor 4 won't work. Huh. Interesting. Must be some sort of firmware issue with it. All right, so we're gonna start cutting and stripping some wire here. I'll wire clip to go. I don't use wire strippers because the silicone wire pretty easy to strip without it. I did kind of prep my wire a little bit before I started this. My camera control wire, the ones that come with this are like that long, and I need one that goes about that long, so I just used another chunk of wire that I had on another plug. Alright, so let's go ahead and tin these guys up. Again, like I said before, 850 degrees. That's in freedom units. Whatever the Celsius conversion is, I have no idea. And I don't care. Alright, so this here is going to be this 8-volt pad here. I really wish I could zoom that camera in like I would if I was recording this. And I do like to build in towards the center of the board. But with this, it really doesn't matter because those ducts are going to keep you from chopping wires, which is kind of my reasoning for doing it. I don't really see that being an issue with this build, but you know, habits. There's power. These are another indispensable tool. I don't know what they call it, forceps, hemostat, something like that. I think it's forceps. And again, just like the ESC, the ground plane does take a little while to heat up, so you will have to be on the pad for a little bit longer. Yeah, I watch too much AVE. Alright, video in. It would be easier to wire up video out now because it's behind this pad, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And camera control is the next pad over. This camera doesn't use UART control. It uses the old style camera control where it's just like digital pulses. And there's camera control. So there's our camera all wired up. And to tidy this thing up, we'll just give it a twist. Yeah, they are the same ones JB uses. I haven't seen any other ones out there. I got them from Hobby Lobby. We got another hobby shop called Hobby Town. Whenever someone says one or the other, I always think of the wrong one. So there's the camera. We have power, ground, video, and camera control connected. Get you a nice good close up there. And the reason I didn't go through and pre-tin these is because they were already soldered from the last build I had. Yeah, I don't think anybody makes another set of these. So the way these made by testers, like I don't know if there's another company out there that does it. Okay, let's move on to the VTX. So we're going to use the Tramp HV with the TPU parts. Shendrone does release all their STLs for free. It's all on Thingiverse. Just go to Shendrone's site and you have to dig through a couple pages, but you'll find them. But if you do get this, be very careful because there's STLs for the V1 squirt and the V2 squirt. They don't sell the V1 anymore, and the V1 ducts don't fit on the V2 frame. Just the way it is, I guess. Anyways, I'm going to put my VTX right about now because there really isn't much more space. I really would have liked to have seen this flight stack forward more, like up here, so there was more room for crap in the back, like a lot of manufacturers doing like 2 20x20 stacks, so you can run. I know it would matter on this one, like a Caddx Turtle or a Split Mini, but it'd be nice to have that flexibility of mounting. And since you're probably not going to fly this in auto level modes, I don't see the point of really worrying about having that gyro dead center, even though the gyro on this board is here. It's not centered anyways, and most of them aren't. So we'll go ahead and put these back standoffs in. Just for reference, the front and rear use the longer set of standoffs. Everything else uses the short ones. Now I know when I'm done with this that this build is going to be a porker because I really haven't sourced out ultralight parts to make this thing light. Even though that's kind of one of those things you need to do. Do I like the Tramp better than Unify? I haven't used any of the new Unifies, but old Unifies versus the Tramp wins in my book, hands down. The feature set is better. Mostly the smart audio control, the layout of it, like it doesn't take up the space. I think they're about the same weight. The touch wand, if you have any newer smartphone with NFC, you can program this thing before you even turn it on. You can write your channel, your power, and all that stuff to it. But pit mode actually works on this. You can actually truly turn this in and out of pit mode with your transmitter, whereas the Tramps, I don't believe you can. And if you did, you can't take it back out of pit mode. There's some weird stuff with the Tramp about that, and there's been plenty of races where I plug in, I set the quad down, I start walking away, and I lose video, and I gotta go back and start pushing the button on the Tramp to get it out of pit mode. But I mean, they're both great VTXs. If you told me I could only have one, it'd probably be the Tramp. And that's a toss up. They're both great. But I haven't tried any of the new ones. I would like to try one of the new ones. They're supposed to be a little better. Okay, what did I do with the pigtail for this thing? There it is. All right. Let's see. So the Tramp, there's a ton of connections on it. This front one here, that's all for the touch, the NFC touch wand programming. And the back one's the one we're going to use. So it goes from the top to the bottom. It goes audio, telemetry, video, 5 volts out to the camera, a shared ground, and power in. And I remove the audio wire because I don't have audio, and I remove the 5-volt wire because I'm not going to power the camera with it. And normally I would power this right off of VBAT, but like off the main discharge lead, but there is a VBAT pad here on the top of the flight controller, so I am going to utilize that guy. And these wires are all pre-tinned. They are a touch on the long side, but I will just twist them up as we go because I'm very non-committal at this point. This quad is very, very specialized. Like, I've always got all these great ideas in mind, but let's see what actually happens if I actually do anything with it. And there's power. Now let's see, video. Let's go disconnect that for now. So my video out from the flight controller is right behind the video in, which is super inconvenient, like I said before. So I've got to get in there and get to this little guy here behind everything else. Oh, this will be fun. You know what? I'm not going to do that yet because the one next to it is smart audio. So, well, it doesn't have to be smart audio, but that's where they want it, so we'll go with it. You could definitely use whatever resource you wanted. Well, that's where they want it. I probably should have wired up the, I definitely should have wired up the VTX first rather than the camera. All right. And video. Well, I hope I get some killer video out of it, but I'll be the first to admit I am not a super creative person. I have the ability to think analytically and follow directions, but creativity has never been one of my strong suits, unfortunately. But I'm always trying new things. Well, I think that ain't too shabby. Run that mess of wire here. And basically, I want to make sure I don't have any wire sitting on top of the gyro. That'll cause all sorts of issues. All right, well, I'm running low. I'll be back in about 3 seconds. All right, I'm back. I'm back. To get something else. Ran out of PBR. So, you never had Yingling. It's good stuff. I lived in a state my entire life where they still don't import this stuff. Up until a couple years ago. And it was always like every time you drove to Ohio, you were like bootlegging because you always had to bring a couple cases of Yingling back with you. It was Yingling and Fat Tire. Those are the two beers we could never get in Michigan. Not really sure why. Some weird archaic pasteurization laws or something. I don't know. Weird stuff. All right. Moving on. We're moving on to the receiver now. Again, like I said in the beginning, this is the R9mm receiver. And these things are pretty hard to wire up without the diagram because it's not like there's a pin out on them. Yeah, I wish I could get you one too. All right, let's see. What did I do with the manual? Oh, here it is. No shame in using the manual. So, like I said in the beginning, I've already flashed this with my choice of firmware because when I got it, it came with a bag. Oh, here's the bag it came in. It's R9M firmware version 6.1. I couldn't find anything on FreeSky's website that said version 6.1. That's not how they label their firmware. So I didn't know what was on it, so I just flashed what was on my R9M light module, since I'm using the X light, and I flashed the F port. So a little tutorial here, because this is 90% of the questions I get about this stuff. So you have S bus out, S port, F port, ground voltage, inverted S port. And everybody says you want uninverted S port. Well, S port is already inverted. So Free Sky's saying our signal is normal. We'll invert it for you. That's what this one is. So if you're looking for the uninverted signal or the hacked signal, this is your guy here. This one will be the standard configuration of the S port signal from FR Sky. But I'm using F port, so I'm going to use this pad here, voltage and ground, and these two will be left out. And if you're running servos, that's what these are for. If you're not using a flight controller, using S bus or F port, you'd wire 4 servos to here. You'd have to power them some other way, but that's where you would wire them. Oh, where'd my vise go? Oh, there it is. Get my handy dandy plastic vise. Brant, if you're still in the chat, I got your vise for you. It looks sweet. I really like it. I got to get it to you one of these days. All right. So, again, 850 degrees. A little bit of solder on the tip to make that thermal bridge. 1, 2, and 3. There's that. And let's see. So on the frame, we need to run to these pads here. I would like to put the receiver up here. I shouldn't put it here, but I'm going to put it here anyways. The reason why I say I shouldn't put it there is I've had issues where the R9 signal does kind of mess with your video a little bit. You'll see some weird wavy lines. It's not impossible to fly through, but I don't know. I think my antenna is close enough to my receive antenna is close enough to my VTX antenna that it's not really going to make a difference. So we'll just do what's easy, and then we can go back and fix it later if we have problems. The wire I'm using, this is basically like JB's parts list. It's the Strive Day wire. Good wire, it's cheap. The jacketing on it is excessively thick. For 26 gauge wire, this jacketing is literally twice as thick as it should be. I would like to find a different brand that was thinner. Same size conductor, but thinner jacket. And I'll go ahead and tin these up. One, two, three, there we go. All right, starting from the bottom and up. Sorry, I'm out of camera, or out of view there. Amateur hour, I tell you. All right, so we're going to do our inverted wire. Then voltage in. Darn it, bridged it. Had too much solder on my iron. And ground. So on these receivers, just for reference, there is power and ground labeled on it, and the ground pad is always square as opposed to round, like the rest of them. So there's that, and just clip off a little bit of this. This is PV PVC based heat shrink rather than the polyfin. This is the stuff that you would see on a lot of. It's like what you get with like what you'd see on TBS, or like what's on this tramp. It's like super thin and hard, as opposed to the really thick, kind of soft, squishy stuff, and it shrinks down and really encapsulates everything it touches. So I really like using this stuff. It's got a real high shrink ratio. Pro tip, if you want to extend the life of your heat gun, let it cool off on its own if it has that function. But I want to spare you guys the hassle of having to listen to it. So I'm going to mount my receiver right there with a small piece of VHP. It's very high bond, 3M stuff. If you don't have this stuff, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's thick and squishy, and it'll hold everything. But it holds so well that if you're not careful, you'll end up pulling components off your boards with it if you put it directly on there. So this is going to be on top of 2 pieces of heat shrink as a nice little buffer. There we go. And splat. I'm going to put it right on top of everything else. And I made this neat little mount here for my antenna. It's the beauty of having 3D printing, or at least knowing people have 3D printers. Be able to get some custom stuff. Having the ability to design your own things is almost better than having the ability to print your own things. So that's going to hold the antenna in the upward orientation, kind of like what we were talking about before. And that should give us the optimal signal for this guy. Just kind of mount it up like that. But it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt because it kind of wants to hit the bench all the time. So it fits loose enough that you can pull the antenna up and get some clearance on it, so it's not smacking the bench. All right. So run our power wires and our ground wires. So one of the things about the FR Sky firmware flashing is you can do it through through serial pass-through, but the trick is your receiver cannot be powered by USB. Now, being powered by USB is kind of convenient, especially if you're, when you're setting up and programming your sticks and all that stuff. But the problem you run into is then you can't use serial pass-through. And serial pass-through will allow you to forward the signal from the USB port to any UART on your flight controller. And like I said in the beginning, FR Sky receivers are always looking for a programming signal the second they start up. For I think it seems like it's about half a second. It's looking for the programming signal. Now, if your receiver has been powered up the whole time while you're connected to USB, you haven't had a chance to tell the flight controller that you want to do serial pass-through and start programming the receiver. So that's why we cannot power, or well, why we don't want to power our receiver through USB. So I'm going to put it on just a regular 5-volt bus here. This flight controller does have a specific pad that says it's like USB 5-volt power. But like I said, we don't want that. This does have these huge 5-volt and ground pads for hooking everything up. So we're just gonna they do require quite a bit of heat because they are so large. All right, there's that. Oh yeah, and it can't be on soft serial, or if it can, I haven't figured out how to do it. I've spent many hours trying to or finding resources to allow me to do it, and it just does not work. Yeah, good call, Liberty. I totally forgot about that. And we're going to take this to TX1 is where we're going to hook up our signal wire for F port. And believe it or not, folks, that's all the soldering we got to do. We're done soldering. All right, so here is a pro tip. A lot of people don't know this, and I try to make as many people aware of this as possible. When you're ready to turn your soldering iron off, clean it real good with the little scouring pad and the water that come with your soldering iron. Take some solder and coat the crap out of the end of your soldering iron. Carefully put it away with that big blob of solder and shut it off. It's going to look terrible, and a lot of people, like, it scratches that OCD itch people have. But what that's going to do is that's going to encapsulate the tip of your soldering iron, and it's going to keep it from oxidizing. It's going to allow your tip to last way longer than it normally would, and it'll make soldering easier because you're not fighting through the oxidation that's in the tip. All right, we just got to connect our ESC to our flight controller with a little ribbon cable. Oh, don't forget a VTX antenna. Something like this, I think a nice long 5.8 gigahertz antenna is prudent. Something to get up past the frame and past the battery for optimal video reception. So I've got this big old nasty immersion RC antenna. These things are great, but acro quads, race quads, man, you just destroy them in a heartbeat. All right, so there's our mess of wires. I might go back and put a beeper on this later, might not, I'm not sure. But as of right now, we'll roll with it the way it is. All right, time for the magic testy device here. Multimeter. On ground. All right, so check from positive to ground here. No continuity. Ground to ground. All right, so here's another thing I want to dispel is people worry about their SMA connector touching the carbon. It's all ground. Ground is ground. Ground is shared between everything. You can have better grounds and worse grounds, but ground is ground. Here, case in point, when I touch these, you get the beep, right? That shows zero infinite continuity, or it shows it has continuity. So from ground to, say, my mounting screws, I should have ground. It's probably not very good, but check this out. Outside of my VTX antenna, perfect continuity to ground. There's other things that you would have to deal with to fix video noise, and it's going to be silly things like the fact that a lot of people making clean builds will run their wires between the ESC and the flight controller. That's going to be more likely to induce noise. What's my favorite VTX antenna? Well, I don't have any one favorite for racing. I really do like the homemade Farview pagodas. They're pretty cheap. You buy them in little kits, you solder them up yourself. Nice little feeling of satisfaction when you're done. Other than that, for racing, the Axie or the Uxie, whatever the knockoff is from overshores or overseas, those are really good because they're durable. They have terrible RF performance, but they're durable. A broken antenna works better than a bad, or works worse than a bad antenna. I'd rather have a bad antenna than a broken one. So that's why I prefer the Axie for racing. As far as for acro, the TBS Triumph is probably my favorite for acro. And for long range, something like this, where it's a skew planer with a really long coax on it. That way you can get up past where your battery would be. Because you get a short, stubby little antenna, I mean, your battery's like, that thing will attenuate your signal pretty badly. So the farther away you can get it, the better, especially if you're going for long range. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Anything beats a linear dipole, even though those things are very durable. The newer Axie micro antennas, like these guys here, these are all just extremely durable. Like, you're gonna break the coax before you break the actual antenna. This one here is one that I got from Armatan. It's like a mini pagoda. I haven't tried it yet, but I've seen good things. And if you watch my last video about the tiny whip race I had at my place, watching my video and then going back and watching some of the other guys' videos, we're all running Tiny Hawks. I'm the only one using the circular polarized antenna on mine. The video is way better with the circular polarized, so that beats out a dipole any day. Tighten these down a little bit. Okay, so moment of truth. I guess we power this up. This could end the video pretty quick here. Okay. Let's see. Antenna's on. Everything's connected. That's connected. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. All right. Powered up. No smoke. It's a good sign. Yeah, I don't think it matters, but I always try to use like a mostly discharged like 2S LiPo to power my stuff up for the first time. I don't know why. I just kind of feel like it'll help. I'm pretty sure it won't, but no, you know, this world's about feelings, right? Okay, so that is that. That's the rough build of this thing. So let's go ahead and get into the old Betaflight there and do some configuration. I will be right back in just a minute. I have to go grab a few cables and get rid of some beer, if you know what I mean. All right, be right back. Could be more in a minute. All right, bye.
cracking.
Alright, I'm back. Sorry, I probably should put my microphone on before I switch scenes. Okay, so need to bind this bad boy.
Welcome to OpenTX.
How's the video? YouTube's complaining that I'm not something bad, not enough video bites, whatever. The internet in my area is not very good. Oh, cool! You bought an Axie for your Tiny Hawk. The only downside to the way I did my Axie is it's really hard to get to the USB port, but that thing's tuned so well that I'm never really gonna get in there and do anything to it. So I'm gonna go through and we're gonna bind this thing. I basically make one model for F-port, one for S-bus. The switches kind of stay the same, so I can just bind more than one model to the same model on my radio. So I'm going to do that with this one here. Pretty simple to bind. You know, just find that button. Make sure you get some clicks on it. It's clicking. Apparently my internet just died here for a second. Are we back? Things working again? I think my video's stuck. There we go. Are we back? What is going on here? Sorry, bear with me. YouTube's not happy with me right now. Okay, well, it seems like it's working again. So they have a live connection. Okay. So, bound my receiver to my transmitter. I hope you guys saw that. We're going to switch over to old Betaflight here. In a second. My poor old laptop doesn't like doing all this stuff at the same time. It's quite a stretch for it. there's Betaflight. That took forever to open. It's actually not open all the way. It's getting there. We're getting there. All right, and this should be my desktop, hopefully. All right, I cannot see the chat while I'm doing this, so I'm hoping it works. All right, Betaflight's up. We'll go ahead and connect this thing. And I already have Betaflight version 4.0 on this board. So we'll go to ports. Well, first off, setup. I'm going to tilt the nose up. Make sure that the quad's moving according to which way I'm moving it, and it looks like it is. So that's good. Go over to ports here. UART1, as you recall, that's where I soldered my my receiver. And this one, UART4 is set up as ESC, so I'm going to leave that there. And let's see. Got to go back to the pin map here. So smart audio is going to be UART2. So we'll change this to IRC Tramp. And that should be that. So hit save and reboot. And I always go back and check to make sure it saved my changes. Older versions of Betaflight would drop your changes all the time. It's just kind of a habit at this point. I've chased my tail for a long time, tracking down problems that were just because it didn't save it. D-Shot 1200, yeah, sure, why not? 8K, accelerometer. Yeah, I'll leave the accelerometer on. The barometer or magnetometer, I don't care about those. So if I had the accelerometer on, I want to leave my arming angle at 180 degrees because I don't care about the safety feature of worrying about it arming in my hand, but I do want to be able to arm it if I land on a roof or in some place where it's not pretty flat. So leave it at 180. It'll allow it to arm at any angle that the quad's facing. Motor direction, I'm going to leave it reversed. Serial-based receiver and FrSky F port is my receiver protocol of choice here. I want telemetry output. I don't need soft serial. I don't have an LED strip. I don't know what, I've never seen anybody use a display, channel forwarding, or transponder. I do want air mode, OSD, ESC sensor, anti-gravity, and dynamic filter enabled. I want my beacon tone. This is for your D-Shot motor beepers, because I don't have a beeper installed. Just be careful with these. If you do lose a quad and lose your RC link between your radio, your motors will sit there and beep, and some motors will actually end up just frying themselves. They beep enough. So we'll go ahead and save and reboot. Check the chat real quick. All right, power and battery. Onboard ADC, and I'm going to use, I believe this one still uses onboard ADC as well for the current metering source, because there is a telemetry, there is a ESC current wire, or there's a current wire from the ESC to the flight controller, so I'm still going to use onboard ADC. I'm going to leave all this alone. I may go back and calibrate the amp meter later on, but I'm not too worried about it now. So move on to failsafe. This one's a big one. I ran into a problem with this, and a buddy of mine, we just dumped a version of Betaflight over, and it did some really weird stuff. It somehow put his throttle to hold, and he failsafed, and it was scary. Like watching the video of it, it was pretty scary. So I'm just going to leave this all alone. PID tuning. I'm not. Oh, yep. I hear you. Let's see. PID tuning. I'm just going to leave this all alone for now. I have no reason to adjust it yet. So this is Betaflight 4.0, just so you know, and this is what it looks like stock out of the box. But I'm just going to leave that alone. All right, receiver. Now here's where the fun stuff starts. So I got to plug in my quad to make my receiver work. All right, we back. Man, it must be getting to that time of day where everybody's sitting down to watch Netflix. Internet in my area is not great. Oh man, somebody tell me if I'm here or not. Are we back? I hope. Looks like we're live again. And I'm sorry about that, guys. My internet has been really acting weird. Hoping to get through this. So we're at the really critical phase of this. I don't know where it dropped out, so I'll go back to the receiver tab. I'm powered up, I'm bound, but I have no sticks, and this is the biggest problem people have with this FR Sky R9 system. Is back to desktop view. All right, so no sticks. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down to the CLI, type get serial. Get, come on, get. Why are you acting so weird? Get serial. We're going to do set serial. Serial RX underscore inverted to on. And type save. This is another one where people really script. They don't type save. Press enter. So Fport's looking for a regular signal, and we have sent it a inverted signal from what it was. So inversion on is what we need there. Let's come back down here, get serial. Oh man, my buddy just told me Nurk's doing a live build of a squirt right now too. What are the chances? Set serial half duplex to on. Set. Oh, serial RX half duplex. Yeah, if you don't get the syntax right, it's just not going to work. And save. And a receiver. Oh, for some reason it's not bound now. There we go. So now we have all our sticks, but they're all in the wrong order. So I'm moving my throttle here. It's moving roll. I've never had any luck bringing down this drop-down menu stuff here. So TAER is my configuration. You just have to know what yours is. If you have a Tyrannus, most likely it's TAER 1, 2, 3, 4. And you see this aux 12 channel? That's my RSSI being fed in from the receiver. So when you look at the firmware version, it says comes in on channel 16. It comes in on channel 16. That is aux 12 because you have 4, your roll, pitch, yaw, throttle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your aux channels are whatever they are plus 4. So RSSI channel for me is aux 12, and we'll hit save. There we go. So that's that. Now we need to move down to modes. This is pretty easy to set up now. Man, Betaflight always crashes on me lately. Oh, that didn't. So add a range of arm, and if you leave it at auto, flip the switch, it should detect which channel. All right, I gotta take a quick break. Be right back. All right, we're back. Sorry, I had to take a little break there. Had to send the kid to bed there. All right, so we've got our receiver working. Set our RSSI channel to aux 12. Make sure we save that. And we're going to move over to modes. Pretty simple, add a mode, flip the switch, and it should automatically populate as aux 1. But we need to make sure we have our slider in range. So that's disarm for me, arm for me. And as far as the other modes go, angle, I'll put on this switch. I don't ever plan on using it, but it'd be nice to have it. And beeper, I'll put on switch 3. And I will also put my flip over after crash on 3, even though I don't know if it'll actually work with this quad, but we'll have it anyway. So anytime I'm doing flip over after crash, I'll have the beeper, and vice versa. There we go. So make sure we hit save. And now everything should light up when I'm in that mode. So here's beeper. There's angle and arm, but arm doesn't light up because I'm connected to the flight controller, and it kind of disables that stuff, so I don't actually accidentally eat my face while I'm on the bench here. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going to move over to motors. And we need to check the direction on our motors. So let me put you on the desktop cam there. And what I'm going to do here, get you the overhead view. What I'm going to do is I am going to spin up each motor one at a time in Betaflight. So I need to say, yep, I accept the risk, and I'm going to spin up motor 1. Yeah, all right, so motor 1 is spinning, and I just need to make sure it's spinning in the right direction, and it is not. It's spinning in the wrong direction, so we need to remember that. Motor 1's backwards. Yeah, Betaflight's a little slow to respond with me streaming here, so all right, I'll go on to motor 2, and I'll slowly speed that guy up. And I just kind of touch it real quick to see which way my finger wants to go on it. And this one is spinning the right direction. We're doing props out, so away from the camera, into the board. So this one is spinning the right way. So one of two things, it's spinning the right way and it's actually spinning the right motor. Okay, motor 3. And that is spinning the correct way as well. And motor 4. Okay, motor 4 is spinning the right way, so the only one we got to flip around is motor 1. Let's go back and double check that. Yeah, motor 1's backwards. So that's not too bad. So now we need to get into BL Heli 32 to program these guys. I hope hope I have the right version downloaded. Alright, so back to the desktop view. We know we need to reverse motor 1, so we're going to disconnect from Betaflight, but we're going to leave it connected to the quad with power applied. And I'm going to open up BL Heli 32 Suite and connect and hit check. This is going to read the ESCs. And now we just need to change motor 1. So we'll right click on motor 1. That will select a single ESC. And motor direction will say reversed. And actually, let me write this. You know, I've had a problem with this version of BL Heli not allowing me to save anything. So we will probably have to check out a new version of BL Heli 32. And we'll just have to dig through the interwebs to find what we're looking for. BL Heli 32 Suite. This is a BL Heli 32 ESC. So I'm pretty sure it is anyways. Go ahead and download this guy. Hello, download. Alright, well I'm going to get this downloaded. I'll be right back. Alright, New version VL Heli. No, we're not on COM 1. We're on COM 4. Connect. Sorry if this is becoming kind of a slog to get through. This isn't the fun part. We want to write a new motor direction to motor 1 and write setup. There we go. All right, so we're going to, I don't want to do that. Check. Okay. We need to disconnect. Then close that. And since we made changes to the ESCs, we do need to power cycle everything. So make sure we disconnect the USB cable, disconnect the battery, and we'll go back into Betaflight here. Go back to motors, and we'll give motor 1 another try. Yep, that's going the right direction. So that's the motor setup. So basically this thing is pretty much ready to fly at this point. Go down and configure my OSD, just because I'm here anyways. NTSC. And this is all kind of left over from my last build, which looks just fine. So we'll just save it that way. So that's that. We don't need our quad plugged in. We don't need Betaflight anymore. Let's go back to overhead. There we go. All right, so the build is basically done. Other than, you know, props and the rest of the stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and finish building this frame up. Get this done. All right, so the rest of the parts that came with the quad are all these little standoffs here. So these I will probably go back and Loctite afterwards. But for now, we'll just forego the Loctite. Now, I was looking today trying to figure out what props to use on this thing, because they do have to be custom cut for your ducts. And it looked like HQ 4 by 4.3 by 3s seem to be the prop of choice. I don't have those. I had some Luminaire 3-inch props that seemed like they would be a good fit for it, but I won't know until I try. Like I said, the props do need to be custom cut. If you're not cutting your props, you're probably leaving performance on the table. And this thing's going to need every bit of it that it can get, because it is kind of underpowered for what you're trying to do with it. I think we're back. I don't know. Kind of unreliable at best at this point. Says I have an excellent connection. Hang in there with me, folks. We're almost there. Almost done. Man, why is my internet getting so bad now? It's just be that time of day, huh? Anything weird? Is it working again? Oops, sorry. Drop my microphone. I'm sure it's really noisy. Alright. Is this working? Okay, I think we're going again. Great. Man, this internet is not doing well right now. Okay, so I hope you guys saw me put the ducts on. So the ducts are installed. And the props that I have are these things. These were Luminaire, what are these? Luminaire 3x4x3s. And I had to cut them down. Let me show you what I cut them with. Right. So this is what I used to cut the props. This design, it's available from, I mean, you can buy it pre-made. Ooh, man. You can buy it pre-made from Shendrones, but they have the 3D print files online. And basically, you take a prop and you clip it down till you're close, and then you just keep working it until you get something that fits inside the duct. And then you just kind of set the set screw here. Turn the Dremel on, you just kind of trim the ends off the blades to get it to fit just right. So then you just do that with all four, and these things should hopefully fit nice and tight in the ducts. So that, yeah, they do need a little bit of cleanup. It's kind of a rough cut I have on there, a little fuzzy at the end, but you know, I mean, it should work, I hope. But I did order some of the HQ 4x4.3x3s, I think is what they were. That's one prop. Yeah, these are actually a little looser than they probably should be. There's still a little bit of a gap. Maybe a little too much gap between the prop and the duct wall. You can see like right there. It's a bit of daylight showing. But I don't know, we'll see. There we go. Last prop nut. That's it. That's the build. Let's clean some of this up here. And then your GoPro goes right in here like this. Let's see how much this thing weighs. $380 grams. That's a bit lighter than I thought it would be. And we'll throw a RDQ 850 4S on there. 482. That's not bad with a full-size GoPro Hero 7 Black. And all the long-range stuff, and not really trying to make it super light. I'm sure we could shave a few grams off of there. We really tried. But that's that. I don't know. You think I should fly it? Think I should maiden it here on the bench? You think, is there anybody even watching anymore? 3 people. Well, oh, anybody left out there? No one's there. I guess I just won't. I probably won't maiden it here on the bench. Or will I?
Welcome to OpenTX.
All right. Okay, here we go. Well, there you go. That's the maiden. All right, well, I hope you really enjoyed watching that. I enjoyed building it. It was kind of fun doing this live stream. I wish my internet wasn't so flaky. I feel like I probably picked the wrong time of day to do this. Saturday at around 9, 10 o'clock. Yeah, probably not the best time to do it. But hey, live and learn. This thing, man, it is scary sounding. And these motors have some punch to them, which I'm really surprised. They're they're actually pretty darn warm. It's definitely gonna need to play with some filtering on them, but it definitely has enough guts to lift this thing pretty quickly. I'm very surprised. So, anyways, thanks for watching. If you like my channel, please like, subscribe, comment. I will be putting this up as a featured video later on after everything gets done downloading and whatnot. Anyways. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. Y'all have a good night and keep on flying. Bye.